Hey now! What is up, everybody? My name is Mike Brown, aka Review King MB, and it's time for what's quickly becoming one of my favorite videos to make nowadays. It's Smallville. I am talking about Smallville episode 3 from season 1 entitled Hothead. And this was quite an amusing episode to go back and rewatch because even just seeing the title, I kind of knew what I was in store for. But going back, I almost forgot just how over the top and silly this episode was. At the very beginning, we see this opening scene reminded me right out of a scene from Friday Night Lights. And I say that being somebody that's never watched Friday Night Lights, it's just something that I've seen commercials or trailers or promotional stuff for, and so instantly got that vibe. I actually think that's exactly what they were going for, especially because Chloe references it later on. But you see a bunch of high school kids playing football in the football game, and the coach, the football coach, is the actor who played the father from the Wonder Years. And if you're too young to know the Wonder Years or have watched the Wonder Years, I can see why that means nothing to you. But for somebody who, I was young enough to where I didn't watch the Wonder Years like Die Hard, right? It wasn't something that I was so tuned into as much as I was for Boy Meets World or even Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, those were my era of sitcom shows. Wonder Years a little before my time, but I did see some of the episodes as a kid, and so this guy definitely have a frame of reference for him. And as much of a warm, loving father he played on Wonder Years, he also, just the actor, I guess, looks like a guy that would have a temper, that would be an asshole, that fits this role perfectly. So great casting in that sense. And when you see that, just how angry he gets, how emotional he gets, at first it's just like, okay, he's intense, but most football coaches are intense, right? I remember the football coach in high school that I saw. I mean, I didn't play football in high school, don't get me wrong, but I definitely remember seeing that coach and just how loud and intense he was. And some of my friends in high school who did play football and did deal with that coach, all of the stories I heard definitely fits that stereotype. And so when you see this guy talking to his players, you're like, all right, there you go. And then he even has his own steam room that he calls the sweat box, which, hey, I get and I understand the reason for people needing to go into a steam room, right? Maybe it helps them release some tension or sort of just gets the negativity out of them. But I'm not really sure why this guy's using it, because I think he's default angry all the time. But when you see that the rocks that he uses for the steam room just so happen to not really be rocks, right? They're Kryptonian meteor rocks. And so that's kind of hilarious. The idea that the writers sat down and said, hey, let's tell a story using meteor rocks, because that's what we do with these freaks of the weeks, is come up with weird ways to use meteor rocks. And so this one, though, is very specific and very just particular in how they're having this guy get his powers. You get a scene where the principal goes up to the coach and tells him that, hey, a bunch of your players are failing their classes, so I'm going to have to suspend them. That's what the principal says. Principal Kwan. I instantly was like, oh yeah, I remember this principal. And he's a lot more by the book, a lot more straightforward. I think they say that the principal has only been there for like 3 months, whereas this coach has been there for like 25 years or whatever it is. The coach thinks that, hey, just let the kids easy, let them off, let's just sweep it under the rug, let them continue to play. The principal is not down for that. And then there's a moment where the coach gets so mad that after the principal leaves, he yells, and then he accidentally causes a fire in his office. And that's freaky, right? Like, if you're the coach and you see this fire just self-combust out of nowhere off of your anger, he reacts to it. He definitely looks at it and he makes a face of like, huh, that's weird. But there's no like, holy shit, what just happened? Did I do that? Or did I do that? No, but like, I don't know. I guess I was just expecting a little bit more. There was also a part of me that was like, is anybody going to put this fire out? This seems super dangerous. If you just sit there and let a fire continue to build like this, it can turn ugly. It can turn bad. The very next scene, we see our group of, Clark, Chloe, and Pete walking through into the high school, and I couldn't help but take note of the song playing. I mentioned music and the era of music that was playing in episode 2. This episode, I'm hearing the Gorillaz, Clint Eastwood. I used to love that song when I was younger. That song was totally my jam. So hearing that absolutely brought me back to a special place. Very cool. And you get a quick moment of Lana getting mad at Whitney. We only see the conversation from afar. We don't exactly know why and what's going on. But it was this moment when Chloe observes that too. And Chloe made some remarks about Lana being the cute, popular girl that Clark's in love with. Almost, sarcastically. But this time, she definitely poked fun at Lana in a way that made me forget that, like, oh yeah, Chloe and Lana were not friends this early on. Like, Chloe comes across like she doesn't like Lana, more so because she's the popular girl that everybody likes. But also, it seems like she looks at her as a girl that just gets a lot of things handed to her, or a lot of things seem to just go well for her. So she just doesn't like her based off of her perception of Lana. I find that interesting because I don't remember how they become friends. I don't remember how that relationship ends up changing. The coach witnesses Clark catching the football because one of the players throws the football at Chloe because she's taking pictures of them from afar. If Clark didn't catch that football was going to whack Chloe in the face. Very effed up, I gotta say. But Clark catches it really quick, reflexes, and then he throws it back to the kid a little aggressively. The coach sees this, and instantly you know what he's thinking, right? Of course. And you get a moment where the coach tries to go to Clark in the hall, is definitely pressuring him to join the team. Even though Clark is already saying that, like, hey, my father's not cool with this, I just can't. The coach is like, I don't care. I don't care. You're going to join the team, goddammit, and be your own man, which is something that's hilarious when Jonathan calls out the fact that that's just what the coach says. He says it to everybody. And I also thought it was interesting, though, that Lana and Whitney happened to be there. And the coach even asks Whitney, what does he think of how Clark would do? And Whitney kind of begrudgingly says, yeah, he'd be all right, whatever. But Lana is staring at Clark to see Clark's answer. And I couldn't tell if she was disappointed when Clark gives in or caves in and says that he'll join the team. I was trying to read her face and read her reaction of, like, is she not wanting Clark to do it because this is something that everybody wants him to do as opposed to what he wants to do? I couldn't tell. The very next moment is her sort of taking Whitney to the side, and she's still angry at Whitney, and you find out that it's because Whitney was defending his football friends who were cheating on Tess, caught cheating on Tess. And Whitney's like, hey, it's cool, it's no big deal, they're my buddies, whatever, get over it. And Lana, at first, it's like, no, I don't like that. That's really messed up. And the fact that you're defending that really rubs me the wrong way. And I like that Lana was calling Whitney out on something that maybe he should have more of an issue with. But then Whitney says, hey, what's really going on here, Lana? Like, why? What's the real problem, right? And Lana pauses and says, well, you're so good at football, Whitney, that I just want to be good at something too. And I'm like, what? Wait, so you're not really mad about the cheating? I mean, I think she is. I definitely think she's upset about these people cheating that she thought she either knew or were friends with. And yes, I think that's definitely a thing. But when she sort of confides in the fact that she just wants to be good at something or as good at something as Whitney is football, I just kind of thought, like, all right, I don't know what that has to do with that. I mean, that could be a separate thing. That could be a separate thing entirely that we can delve into. I think this was the show's attempt. Because Lana in the first episode was the cheerleader. And that's the stereotype of, hey, she's the pretty girl in high school that your main character's into. So, of course, she's the cheerleader. And I think this was the show's attempt to try to make Lana appear like she's more than that, like there's more to her than that. I can appreciate that on paper, but I'm not sure if they went about it the most convincing way or the best way possible. Jonathan obviously does not like Clark joining the team. He's completely against it. They go back and forth. It's weird, this storyline, and not weird in a bad way. It's weird because I don't know how to feel about it. There's a part of me that definitely understands Jonathan and the fact that he doesn't want Clark. He keeps saying he doesn't want Clark to hurt people, hurt other kids on the team, and that obviously, yeah, I get that. But I almost feel like it's more so because he says it later to Martha. Martha! Um, but he says it to her that he doesn't want people to find out about Clark's powers and take him away from them. And I think it's more that, and he's just using the whole hurting other people thing as the front of like why it's such a big deal for him. Obviously, though, you also understand when Clark is trying to say that, like, hey, don't you trust me? I can obviously control this enough to where I'm not going to hurt anybody, and I will make sure that it happens. You get a moment, too, of when the following day. First, I love that when Clark goes to football practice, the first thing he asks Pete is, hey, have you seen Lana? Like, because Lana's usually there for cheerleading practice, but she's not there. She quit. And when he finds out she's not there, he has such a, like, sad look on his face, which is kind of sad. But then he sees his father sitting there in the stands. And this was sad too because Clark was so happy initially that he thought his father was there for support. He thought his father was there to be like, "Hey, son, I'm here to support you." Only for the father to say, "Well, you know, Clark, I'm only here to make sure nobody gets hurt." And it's like, god damn, because Clark looks so defeated. Just a bunch of scenes of Clark being let down by so many people. I should mention really quick, there's a scene, a business meeting scene at the Lex mansion where these business guys all show up. I love Lex's personality here, his attitude. The fact that he doesn't really give a shit about any of this type of stuff. He talks down to them because these guys are sort of corporate stooges for his father, so obviously there's no respect there. Also, they clearly don't respect Lex, especially the main guy talking, because, well, Lex is the son of this billionaire or whatever. And so they probably feel like, oh, he's privileged and he's whatever. So that dynamic was very amusing. I even liked how when the guy was leaving, Lex says, hey, say hello to your sister for me, which is like, goddamn, Lex, you're kind of an asshole, but Rosenbaum plays that up so likable, so well. There was also a scene where Lana tells her aunt, Aunt Nell, that she quit cheerleading. And there's a whole back and forth with the aunt talking to her about, like, should she really have done that? Is she sure she wanted to do that? I guess cheerleading is a big deal in their family. I don't really know. I don't know Aunt Nell as a character. Like, I don't really understand. I guess she's a good person. I have no reason to think she's a bad person, but I was trying to figure out, like, what her stance was with Lana here. Like, why should Lana be a cheerleader? What's the big deal? I did find it interesting when Lana said, well, she just wants to maybe start working and save up money so that she can travel. Lana's trying to figure stuff out, right? And Aunt Nell sort of says, hey, well, I can use you to work at my shop. And then Lana says, no, thank you, but I want to go my own way. Again, they're trying to establish that Lana is her own person, or at least trying to figure out her own identity. It's almost as if the writers are trying to figure out what Lana's identity was, because maybe they themselves weren't quite sure of it. There's another scene where the principal goes back to the coach, and he says to the coach, like, hey, not only did your students cheat, but one of them just told me that you supplied them the test questions and answers. Oops! Caught red-handed. The coach isn't that good of a liar either, because he says that the kid's lying, but then he also says that, like, oh, well, I bet you tried to call the board and get me suspended, but I'm friends with them. They're all cool with me. So that's not going to happen. They're not going to believe you. And it's like, well, okay, you just pretty much confessed without confessing. And then it's another moment where the coach gets mad and angry, and his own TV in his office just combusts in flames. And this happens in front of the principal, and the principal looks over at the fire and then looks back at the coach and says, "What the hell is going on here?" And then just leaves the room. And I'm like, there's a fire, fucking principal. Like, don't you want to make sure that gets put out? Or don't you want, this is dangerous. They just cut to him leaving the school. I'm like, you don't care about that fire? Okay, sure, cool. Another scene of the coach looking confused about the fire. I guess he's putting two and two together because he literally looks outside the window, sees the principal getting into his car. Who does he think he is? And he just closes his eyes. I guess now he's aware that he's the one doing it, and he's okay with that. Because he blows up the principal's car. Now, granted, the principal doesn't die. Clark is walking by and just so happens to see this and gets the principal out of the car, saves him from the fire, which was cool. I always love seeing Clark saving somebody, especially a random person that he doesn't know what's going on there. It was also interesting when Jonathan is talking to Clark about saving the principal. Jonathan says, "Did anybody see you?" Because he's very worried about somebody seeing Clark use his powers and what that could mean. And that obviously leads to another fight between them. And you get a moment when Lana, we see her new job. Her new job is that she's a waitress at this coffee shop. And that was funny because she was very clumsy. She was very bad at it. Now, being a waiter or a waitress, I have seen that up close, and that's a rough job. They are not paid well enough. They are not respected enough. There's even a scene where Lana's talking to Clark, sort of just catching up, and her boss is such an asshole to Lana. I mean, I get that she was talking, but it's like, God damn, this job sucks. Why would Lana put herself through that? There's also another scene. I think I wrote it down, but I'm going to get to it now while I'm thinking about Lana being a waitress, where Lex is at the coffee shop, which, to be honest, Lex in his position, I don't buy really that he would go to this type of coffee shop. This seems a little beneath him, but I guess it's supposed to show that Lex isn't the type of father or the person that his father is, right? So he's there, he's talking to Lana about their situation. Clark shows up, and they're all sort of bonding over not wanting to be like their parents, or yeah, I guess parents, because Lana's mother was a cheerleader as well. And they're all bonding over that, and we don't get a lot of scenes of Clark, Lex, and Lana just being nice to each other or being friends. There's a lot of drama that goes on with these three characters going forward, so it was nice to get one scene where they're all just kind of cool and friendly. There was even a moment where Lana says to them, "Can I get you something?" And they all ask for coffee. And then when she leaves and comes back, she gives Lex like this frappuccino thing, and she gives Clark some like other coffee. And Clark looks at Lex and he goes, "Is that what you ordered?" And Lex goes, "Not even close." That really made me laugh. I know it probably didn't get across from just me explaining it, but I really like their dynamic. I hope to see way more of that. So you get a moment where the coach is angry towards the kids because one of them talked, right? And so he is showing his anger. The sprinklers, this is a very cool special effect. For a show, once again, 2001, WB, low budget, or at least low for that time, they have these fire effects coming out of the sprinklers instead of water that I still don't know to this day how they pulled that off. Chloe followed, though, the kids because she sort of wanted a scoop, and she saw this. She got pictures of this fire effect. Chloe then calls one of the kids to meet so that she could find out the dirt. He doesn't want to talk to her. The coach sees that and threatens the kid. He's like burning his hand with his hand, which is like, wait, what? And then when he finds out that Chloe has the pictures, he goes to Chloe's office, and she doesn't see him. He's outside of the office, but he once again does the whole "I'm closing my eyes" and sets the office on fire, which is insane. I mean, I'm sure most of this was CGI, and I guess fire CGI looks way better than most CGI, because this looked fairly good. This looked like Allison Mack, the actress, Chloe, was in the middle of an office on fire. It looked legit. She asks for Clark outside the window, which is funny because Clark doesn't really have a reputation of saving people. I guess she just saw Clark maybe and just yelled for him. Clark comes in. They do the super speed thing that I enjoyed. He just goes through the fire, saves her. The coach leaves, so the fire dissipates. And then that's when Chloe sort of explains everything to Clark. And I like this because Clark's a little skeptical, but he's not skeptical enough to where he's not willing to talk to the kid that Chloe is talking about. So Clark talks to that kid. And that's where he finds out everything. He finds out about the coach and the cheating. He finds out about the fire stuff. Clark finds out everything. So immediately after that, Clark goes to meet with the coach in his sweatbox, in his sauna room, which is hilarious that Clark just went straight for that room. And because there's kryptonite in there, though, what happens? Clark gets sick. He falls. The coach throws him across the thing. And he's covered with the kryptonite rock, so he's weak in the room. I liked when Jonathan showed up to the game to support Clark, but Clark wasn't there. So Jonathan and Chloe go looking for him. Before I get to the climax, there was a scene where Lex's father, Lionel, shows up. He's mad that Lex won't fire like 20% of the workers at the factory. Lex is totally against it. And I like that Lionel challenges Lex to like a duel with their swords, like a fencing type deal. Because he wants to not only show that he's better at Lex in that, but also it's to bruise Lex's ego so that Lex just goes along with it and just does what he wants. And so that power dynamic, I think, great, not introduction to Lionel because we saw Lionel in episode 1, but a great reintroduction to him this time around. So when Jonathan finds Clark in the sauna room, and then I'm realizing now that this is the first time Jonathan is hearing about the kryptonite rocks, the meteor rocks, and that being a weakness, a sign of weakness for Clark. And the coach shows up, attacks them. There's a whole back and forth with Clark he throws the coach so far across the room into like the showers, and the coach creates a fire sort of around him. I loved the moment when Clark just walks through the fire. It's so badass. It's so just like, you know what? I don't give a fuck. I'm not saying the effects were perfect, but it was still the visual of him doing that I thought was badass. Very interesting because the plan was not to kill the coach. Obviously, Clark is not a killer. But he just exposed his secret to the coach. And if the coach had lived, I wonder what the consequences would have been. Maybe they just would have lied and said that the coach was crazy and that he's just saying weird shit. But that would have been a big problem. Luckily, the coach gets so mad and so angry that he creates more fire coming out of the showers. And the fire just engulfs the coach, kills him. He kills himself by fire. So, I mean, maybe anticlimactic, but I still thought it was fine. I still thought it worked to an extent. And we get a moment of Jonathan and Clark talking where they make up, and so I like that because obviously the father-son dynamic and the family dynamic is what I'm enjoying the most rewatching these earlier episodes. And then the last scene, Lana shows up on the football field and she tells Clark that she was fired because she did suck as a waitress. I didn't mention the scene earlier where she accidentally drops a bunch of cups of coffee. Somebody bumped into her and everybody in the room claps because she's such a screw up. So she was fired, but she's sort of learning the lesson of like, hey, you know, maybe things didn't go my way, but I'm still on the right track. Maybe. I don't know what her lesson really was, but I did find the moment sweet. I did find the moment charming. I know it's super cheesy, but I just liked the two of them sort of saying, you know, sometimes things just suck and you just want to scream. And Lana's saying, well, let's just do it. Screw it. Like, who cares? Let's just scream right now, the two of us. And Clark says, okay. And then the episode ends with the two of them screaming. And I liked it. It was cute. And it was also, I like seeing these two characters bond over things. I mean, it might be a slow process, but seeing these two hopefully develop this chemistry and future relationship, I like seeing the beginnings of that. I like seeing Clark find more reasons to like Lana, more so than just, hey, she's hot. Like, more on a personal level. And I think that's where we're trying to get to. So, guys, I thought this episode was fun. It is silly, it is super goofy, and I get if people don't like this episode or find it too over the top, but I enjoyed it overall. It's going to take a really bad episode in order for me to completely crap on a Smallville episode. Not saying it won't happen, it probably will. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of Hothead? Do you dislike it, or do you find it amusing? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later!